everybody. You've tuned in to the Indiana State Police Roadshow. I'm Sergeant Rich Myers with the Indianapolis State Police Public Information Office. We thank you for tuning in to our show. We thank the Indiana State Police Alliance, Cops for Kids, for funding our show each and every week. We thank Tom Trial for being with us behind the scenes this morning and talking and putting us on YouTube each and every week. So thank you, Tom. With me today is the Executive Director for Indiana Operation Lifesaver, Jessica Fetter. Jeff, did I say that right? Is it Fetter?
Yes.
Thank you for being here, Jessica. Appreciate you coming all the way up this morning from way down south there in Scottsburg, Indiana. God's country, as we like to say.
It's very pretty down there this time of year.
Yes, it is. It's
Thank
beautiful.
you for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. And something very important, something that we have on our website, one of the passing banners that we like to have on there to promote the safety is Indiana Operation Lifesaver. So tell us a little bit about what Indiana Operation Lifesaver does.
Okay. Indiana Operation Lifesaver, it's a nonprofit public rail safety education program.
Okay.
So our main goal is to try to eliminate grade crossing collisions, meaning railroad crossing collisions. That's more of a technical term, the grade crossing part. Trespasser incidents and deaths on rail property. We want to see those numbers decline as we're ranked pretty high in the state for crossing collisions, and our trespassers aren't as high as some other areas, but the incidents are increasing. So by doing that, we do a lot of things. We give presentations all over to anything you can think of. We'll do a presentation at schools, civic organizations. We work a lot with the state police. We work with law enforcement, first responders. If you can think of a place to have a presentation, we've probably done it, or an event. We just finished up some stuff with Boo at the Zoo here in Indy this past weekend, too. We also try to do a lot of PR, public outreach. We do PSA campaigns, advertisements. We try to work with NDOT a lot, as much as we can, too, as far as keeping the crossing safe. There's Section 130 funds for funding and things like that. We try to work real close with them. So our main goal is to try to get our message out there that you need to be safe around railroad tracks and railroad crossings, and to try to eliminate unnecessary deaths and injuries.
So how do you reach out to the people? Is that through media? Is that for, you say you give talks and things, but is that media, television, or radio, or both? Or
we do both.
Okay.
We do a lot of things. We operate under something called the 3 E's, which is education, engineering, and enforcement. So through the education, we work with the public, whether it be through media campaigns, public relations campaigns. We just we're actually in the middle of one right now from Indianapolis south through the southern part of the state. Like I said, with presentations. So any way we can educate the public.
Right.
There's lots of ways we do that. And then with the enforcement part, obviously, is working with law enforcement.
Right.
The state police just did a lot for us during Rail Safety Week, especially in northern Indiana. But we work with our judicial side to make sure people are, getting the tickets they need, prosecution, things like that. Working with the judges. We also work with law enforcement on the aspect of we offer training. We are certified under the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy and the Training Board. Okay. So officers can come through our grade crossing collision investigation classes to receive training on what to do when there's a rail collision versus any vehicle. And they get CEUs for doing that as well. And the same with first responders. And then the engineering part is a little more above us, but we still work with the railroad companies and NDOT to make sure that the proper signals, the engineering things that need to happen at the crossings happen. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of how we work in those 3 areas, and it's kind of, we plan it out that way.
How does Indiana rank as far as miles of tracks, or however you plan it? Do we have a lot of train traffic as compared with other states?
We do. We are actually ranked 4th nationally for crossing collisions. We're behind Illinois, Texas, and California.
Okay.
With that being said, we have about 1.1 crossings per track mile in Indiana, which is roughly around 6,000 crossings.
Wow.
One thing we are working on, we're trying to work with NDOT and some other legislative branches to see if we can't close some of those crossings. We have too many in this state, and that's something we're trying to work on from a legislative standpoint too. But we do have quite a few crossings and a lot of track miles in Indiana.
And I'm sure that probably the ones out in the rural counties, people probably become accustomed to them being there and not seeing a train for years and years when they come through there. Not saying trains don't come through there, and just kind of get lackadaisical when they come up to them. And a lot of times that's where collisions happen, I'm sure.
Right. And I will say, too, a lot of people, the train traffic is increasing, as is vehicle traffic.
Correct.
We're in a huge area for a hub coming in and out of Chicago, so we're just in a location where we're always going to have that.
Right.
But trains are quieter now than they used to be. We've welded rail, and you don't get the clickety-clack that you used to get. So people don't hear them like they used to, and so that poses a lot of problems, too.
And with the more soundproof cars that we have now, well, with, everybody, or almost everybody has air conditioning anymore. And with their radios turned up, or their MP3 players, or the headphones in, or their earbuds or something, probably not hearing the best out there either.
No, and that's what I always turn my radio down when I approach a railroad crossing and try to pay attention, look both ways. But one of the things we're seeing with trespassing that's a problem is the noise-canceling headphones or earbuds. Distracted driving, too, is an issue, but I know a lot of people are having issues right now with the Dr. Dre noise-canceling headphones, and that's an issue for us, too, because then you really can't hear anything approaching you, and that's where we've seen a lot of trespassing incidents over the past probably 2 or 3 years with earbuds or headphones.
And we've discussed this through state police, and even with that, you see somebody struck on the, walking down the train tracks, and they're struck, and the people are saying, well, how in the world can they not hear that train coming? But that makes sense now.
Mm-hmm. That's very much so. Sometimes I'm still not sure how they don't feel the vibration to some degree, but I'm sure by the time they do feel it, it's right up on them.
Right.
And they don't have time. But it is very common, and we're seeing a lot more of that now.
So how many collisions did Indiana have last year? Do you know?
There were 123 last year. We were down from the year before, but 123 crashes last year in Indiana.
Does that do we have any idea on fatals?
Though out of those 123, there were 50 injuries in that and 9 fatalities.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So what can we do? What can we do to the public to? Obviously, the trains can't stop. They're not going to be able to stop if there's something like that. It's got to be up to the public to monitor that crossing and to pass there safely, because I don't have any idea. Can you tell me how long it takes a train to stop, or what it is?
There's a lot of different scenarios, but the average scenario, so let's say you have a train not carrying coal, just a light, normal locomotive engine with several cars traveling. If it's traveling 55 miles per hour, it's going to take it a mile or more to stop. And that is just a light train. If you have a really heavy train, it could take it up to 2 miles. And that's from the time the engineer applies the emergency brake. So, you're not going to have time. They don't have time.
Yeah.
And I've seen, a lot of times people don't realize that the victims in this are also the train crew.
I'm sure.
I've seen a lot of train crew members not be able to come back to work after an incident like that, knowing that they killed someone.
Yeah.
So, that's something I like to point out to the media a lot of times, too, when they kind of act like it's the train's fault or whatever. The train cannot stop. It can't swerve. There's no steering wheel.
Right.
So the train crew really needs to be remembered and things like that as well. But you really have to pay attention. People just take it for granted.
So is 55 kind of a common speed across Indiana?
It depends. We have so many different areas. The rural areas, no. Yes, up north, I would say that.
Okay.
And then maybe coming through different parts of Indianapolis, yes. More rural areas, you're not going to see them go that fast.
Okay. So the trespassing that we were talking about a while ago, you say that's increasing?
It is, and it's increasing nationwide. Last year was the first year we had more trespassing incidents than we did collisions for the nation, not Indiana, but for the whole nation. It is rising. And we had 10 trespasser deaths last year and 11 injuries. But we are seeing it so much more anymore, especially you'll see it around college campuses. It's almost like it's an ingrained way of life in some areas, almost like a culture. Especially you'll see it in northern Indiana. It's just a way to get from point A to point B. They've done it for years.
Yeah.
So we're really trying to get that word out there. And we have a lot of help from law enforcement, but I will say in that law enforcement a lot of times have bigger issues than trespassing to deal with. So I know it's not a top priority. But with that being said, we really need to try to get that message out there more.
So the what does the railroad? Oh, I know the tracks. Is there so much on each side of the track? If it's not in a rail yard or something, is there so much on each side of the track that they have?
Yeah, they do. I mean, I don't know always where the property line ends, but I will tell you that a train overhangs the track by 3 feet. So you're not safe even if you're just walking next to the track either. So I would say anywhere you see rock or ballast or anything like that, you need to stay away from it and make sure you're not on their property.
And that's going to be can be enforced by Indiana law. That's trespassing against the.
It is, and and it depends what area you live in and whether they uphold the ordinances, but it can be up to 1 year in jail or $1,000 fine.
So what's Indiana Rail Safety Week when we talk about that?
Indiana Rail Safety Week is something we do every year, and it's always the last week of August. The governor, for the last 6 years, has proclaimed it Rail Safety Week, and that week is just a week of tons of presentations, blitzes. With blitzes, I mean we work with law enforcement all over the state. We had blitzes all across Indiana and a huge focus in Northwest Indiana this year with our task force we have up there, where we go out and the police and me too, I sit out there with them. We monitor the crossings and we see what people are doing, and if they're disobeying the law that week, they're ticketed. Now, some things we do are positive enforcement, where if we see you doing the right thing, you get maybe a gift certificate or a gift card or something like that.
There you go.
So we've been out doing that as well. We had PSAs showing at minor league baseball games that week. We did a lot of TV, radio interviews. We had PSAs going from Indianapolis South. We had some billboard coverage. We did some trainings that week as well. Just it was a week where we kind of do everything that we do all year round, but concentrated. Good. Yeah.
Well, railroad crossing and gates. I know not all crossings have the lights and the gates. Why is that? And is there something that decides which ones get gates and which ones don't?
There is. The owner of the road is responsible for putting in gates and lights. So if it's a state road, then it would be NDOT's responsibility. And those are usually done by traffic studies. Okay. So you'll see there's a pot of money that we get called Section 130 funds, and there's roughly around $6 to $7 million in that a year. But a set of gates and lights is roughly $250,000. So $250,000 doesn't go very far whenever you only have that amount of money. So they do studies to see where those gates and lights need to go in. However, a question I get a lot from news reporters is that, gates and lights would make it safer, so why aren't they at every crossing? And I'll tell you that 67% of the crashes that happen in Indiana happen at crossings with gates and lights.
Wow.
So they're just a warning device. They're not a protective device, and people go around them.
Right.
I mean, they don't want to wait, especially in areas where you see a lot of vehicle and train traffic. So that's kind of how we get them, but they don't necessarily make it safer.
Well, somebody is on a railroad crossing and say their car stalls or they get stuck on a track. Can you offer any advice what they should do?
Sure. So if your car stalls or you're stuck, what you need to do is you need to get out of that vehicle and you need to run at a 45-degree angle towards the way the train's coming. So the reason we tell you that is if you run 45 degrees towards the train, I mean, not at it, but 45 degrees with the direction the train's coming from, you're going to miss the debris. When it hits that vehicle, there's going to be debris that flies everywhere, and you're still going to get hurt or injured. So we want to make sure.
If you run away from the vehicle, like the train's going,
right,
you're going to go with the debris.
You're going to go with it.
That makes a lot of sense.
So we want you to run in the opposite direction at a 45-degree angle because, the way the train's coming, that direction, because we don't want you to get hit with flying debris. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. And, of course, if it's stuck, get away from the vehicle. You don't want to stay in that vehicle.
And get out.
Yeah.
And call 911. And we always try to tell you to call the ENS number on the sign. So at every crossing, you're going to see a blue sign with numbers and letters on it and a 1-800 number. That 1-800 number goes directly to the dispatch center for that railroad.
Great.
And that can get that train stopped faster than calling 911. And then you call 911 immediately after that.
Well, we've went through a lot of information here very quickly, and I appreciate you coming in, Jessica. We've run out of time here to talk, but thank you so much for coming in and talking about Operation Lifesaver and website?
www.oli.org.
Great. Well, this has been Jessica Fetter with the Indiana Operation Lifesaver. She's the executive director for there. You've been listening to the Indiana State Police Roadshow, brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance and Cops for Kids. We appreciate you tuning in to us. Go to that website. There's a lot of useful information. And if you want a program brought to your group or organization, Jessica will be glad to, or get somebody there that'll talk about Operation Lifesaver.
Definitely, sure.
Thanks for coming in and joining us this week. We are talking with Operation Lifesaver, Jessica Fetter, the executive director. Operation Lifesaver is a nonprofit group in Indiana.